All right, we are live. Samir, welcome to the channel and welcome to the show. I'm excited. This is like I feel like after 1 year
Yeah.
we are doing this, so this is gonna be
Well,
so much.
we've been talking for a while.
Yes,
I feel like I've known you for at least a couple years now, and so it's a
yeah,
real thrill and honor to be here. So I'm super excited. Thanks for having me.
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But before we get started, if you wanna do like a quick intro, who you are and like what's Vanguard visa law, and then like talk about that.
Sure. How far back do you want me to go? Beginning of the firm, beginning of my life? What do you have in mind?
Maybe.
I'll do the beginning of my life because I swear it has a relationship. So,
Okay.
um, and what is my connection to immigration, basically?
Yeah.
Okay, so my parents immigrated to U.S. In the early '70s, and then they were living in LA, which is timely as of kind of this weekend. My mom actually went back to India to have me,
Mm,
which is the opposite of what literally everybody in the world is trying to do right now.
yeah.
But that is my wonderful mom. And so I was born in India. She turned around when I was 6 weeks old, and I came back to the U.S. with me in tow. So from that point on, I had a green card for 30 something years. I remember having to fix my green card because they kept messing up my name and not knowing how to do it, and standing in line and trying to convince them to just do their job basically, and realizing that I actually was pretty good at it. And I saw a lot of other people who were kind of going through a lot of the same agony and couldn't figure it out. So I really felt for them. Then I put that out of my head, went to law school, after law school, fell into an immigration law firm job,
Mm.
just totally randomly. Did my own citizenship as a new immigration lawyer, and here we are. This is 25 years later now, or 25-ish years later. Started Vanguard Visa Law in 2018 with the express purpose and mission to help close the information gap between company, university, and immigrant. Okay.
Nice.
Um, Companies and universities all want the same thing. The system doesn't allow for it, right? And so that's what led to Unshackled, led to our firm, and the primary reason why we are here today.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And you help pretty much students, working professionals, founders. I saw like we
yeah,
connected with one of the founders. So anybody and everybody who needs immigration need.
yeah. We work primarily what we call business immigration, but that includes, yeah, those that are like on work visas or needing or wanting to get work visas in the future, right?
Hmm.
Those that are starting companies. We help companies who are hiring immigrants, like maybe you're a founder, maybe you're a U.S. citizen, but you want to hire immigrants. So we kind of work kind of within that whole genre.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So obviously there's a lot going on in the immigration world, and I want to start with like I have three kind of main areas I want to touch on before we start like Q&A. The first one is ICE raids. There's like so much of media coverage and all of it's what's going on. I think people are confused, like what is going on and what does this mean for them? Like how do they like navigate this? So what's your thought on it?
I have many. Where do we start? I guess, I mean, primarily the audience here, right? Primarily, I'm not saying all of them, but most of the people that are listening to this podcast probably have a visa,
Yeah,
right? A
yeah,
student visa or a work visa or some sort of quote unquote legal status in the US, right?
yes.
And so the like all the enforcement, all the stuff we're hearing about is primarily directed towards those that don't have visas that are here
Mm,
in the US, quote unquote, illegally.
yeah,
Okay.
like an
So let's
undocumented.
just the undocumented population. So I don't want to make light of that because it's actually not a black and white line. It's a
Mm,
very complicated issue. The
mm,
area between undocumented and documented actually is very fuzzy, right?
mm,
And we can get into that in a second. But what's happening right now? Okay, so um, this current administration came into power primarily on the backs of their promises to fix the immigration problem. It was a big problem, the kind of illegal immigration problem towards the end of the prior administration, which prior administration probably did not do a very good job
Mm,
of minding the border, right? And there are lots of people coming in, they were being shipped off to different cities. It was creating really bad press for the Democrats and led in large part to the Trump administration coming into power. Okay,
mm,
so their promise was we are going to fix the border problem. Okay,
mm,
and they brought in somebody named Stephen Miller.
yeah.
Okay, whose sole purpose in life, honestly, is to, we can get into this, but he's anti all immigrants,
Yeah.
legal or illegal. Okay, but he's focusing on this illegal immigration problem. Okay,
Mm,
and this is his directive. This is his baby. Okay,
mm,
and fast forward to now. Okay, you're getting all the deportations and all the things that the ICE raids that are happening between January and now, well documented. All the issues that are happening at the airports with travelers coming in. This is all kind of a symptom of this increased enforcement, anti-illegal immigration mindset.
mm,
Okay, um, but what happened over the weekend in LA, right, was a direct result of there were raids happening at Home Depots, right? And that was a direct result of Stephen Miller getting very upset with ICE last week
mm,
because they were not meeting his kind of, he just came up with this quota of, I think it was 3,000 deportations or at least detentions per day. So
mm.
some crazy quota he had in mind, right? And he's like, I don't care what you have to do, go to the Home Depot, go to 7-Eleven, you find those people. Remember, the promise was to find criminals originally, right?
Yeah.
But Stephen Miller had this quota in mind, okay? And so now they're just like, well, we're not going to find enough criminals to meet this quota, so we're just going to go to Home Depot. We're going to go to schools. We're going to go to
Oh,
work
wow.
sites, right? We're going to
Mm,
go anywhere. We're going to go to immigration court where people are literally applying for asylum to become legal. They're in between illegal and legal. We're going to go there and we're going to pick them up and arrest them. And that's also what's happening right now. Okay.
mm, mm.
So I don't know if that answers your question,
No, I
but
mean, yeah,
yeah, you can kind of get a sense of the environment right now,
yeah,
right? Um, but to this audience, it's not primarily directed. Okay, not primarily directed at you in terms of ICE. Okay,
yeah,
ICE is going after people that do not have any legal status or have questionable legal status in the U.S. right
yeah, yeah. And if, is there any advice if this is happening outside my apartment? What should I do? How do I like? Should I go out? Should I not go out? Or what do I do?
Well, number one, okay, what if they knock on your door?
Mm,
Okay, the first thing to always remember, this is the beautiful thing about the United States,
mm,
is that we are a nation of laws and we have a constitution. Okay, and one of these days, when you're applying for citizenship, you're going to have to read it and understand it. Maybe even before. It's a really beautiful document. Okay,
mm,
in this constitution, it prohibits certain things, right?
mm.
Like called unlawful entry, unlawful search and seizure. This is to protect you from the tyranny of the police
Yeah,
or the government,
yeah,
right? So what that means is they cannot enter a private residence without a judicial warrant. Okay.
mm,
Sometimes they hold up what's called an administrative warrant, meaning they give themselves a warrant. It's like they print it off a GPT and say, here it is, it's got their letterhead, right? That's not a judicial warrant. A
okay.
judicial warrant is a document given to them by a judge, signed by a judge.
Mm,
And that is what gives them permission to enter a private premises, whether it be a home or a
mm,
business or a
mm.
school, right? Something like that. Okay.
God, yeah.
So if first thing, if they're like, I'm ICE, I'm coming in, you're like, show me your judicial warrant. If they don't have one and it's not signed by a judge, do not let them in.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
Um, Now, what if like they encounter you outside, like in the public, like they are allowed to be in the public, right? So if they ask for your immigration documents, if you're on a visa, technically you are supposed to have proof of your status at all times.
yeah,
Even green card
yeah.
holders are still immigrants, right? Realistically, nobody has it. I mean, if I had a green card, which I did for many years, I'd be deathly afraid of losing it, just carrying it with me wherever I go, right?
Mm,
So the best practice would be carry some proof of it with you, right? Like pictures of your visa, pictures of your I-797, your I-94, whatever it is that you have, right?
Yeah.
I-20 on your phone,
Yeah.
or even copies with you. Keep copies with you and say, I
Mm.
have the original at home. Here are my copies, right?
Mm.
If asked for documentation,
Mm.
they have the right to ask you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the end of the day, they don't have the right to ask you any more than that. And if they are harassing you, you can say, I don't need to answer any more questions. I want to call my attorney, right? And then you should have an attorney or a friend, somebody help advocate for you, and deal with that. The ACLU has, maybe I can send you a link to this later. They have a really good site on what happens or what to
Mm.
do if ICE were to accost you, for example,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And follow the instructions there. But the most important thing to remember is do not let them into your house or your
Mm.
business.
Mm.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Nice. What I mean, and also there's been a story about this. Media has covered this story about this Indian student got like deported, or at least got ambushed by these ICE agents, and he was treated like a criminal. That's what the story said. I don't know the details about it. Do you know any insight, like what's going on there?
I know what you're talking about. I need to reserve judgment until I get the specifics of that story. Okay. It's really easy, number one, to assume the worst. My
Mm.
grandma does this. She's hearing stories of like somebody got deported with a green card, like whether or not that happened. And now everybody in our family who has a green card is in danger, right?
Mm.
It's scary. It's all very scary. But there are very technical details that are important to know.
Mm.
Um, and so I want to reserve judgment until I kind of learn more about that. But if you're on a student visa,
Yeah.
okay, um, keep in mind that like ICE, if it's ICE, right? ICE is like what I just said, like they are going after a lot of people because they have a lot of pressure to meet a quota, which
Right.
means they're going after people and possibly detaining people that they should not be detaining. They're
Mm.
overcompensating, right?
Mm.
And so it might happen. It's happened. I mean, we've sent the people that should not have been picked up. We sent them to El Salvador, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mm.
and so mostly people kind of in this weird in between status, right?
Mm.
But if you're a student and this happens to you, right? Like what happened there? Um, Make sure like it's possible you'll get detained. Like I don't know what to tell you. At this point, like I don't feel like you're totally safe, right? Like if they come to you for some reason. Now,
Yeah.
would they come to you? The reality is they have a list of people they're going after. They usually have a reason that they're going after somebody. Sometimes they're looking for somebody's parents, right? And they
Mm.
and they get the kid on the visa.
Mm.
So it's a little unclear. I do have to reserve judgment. But the best thing you can do is to be educated about like your status. If you are in status, show them proof, right?
Mm.
But you will get treated like a criminal. You will. Like that's what they do. They treat everybody like criminals. So,
Mm.
you know, you know.
Yeah. Okay. And I know there's a lot of questions about F1 visa, because that's an audience as well. Um, do you know if do you have an update? Like I know they paused all the F1 visa appointments. Anything is this similar thing like they're trying to do, like not to let people come
Yeah,
in, or is I know the reason they gave is they want to increase a
yeah,
lot more social media vetting. Is
yeah.
that similar?
So, so now we're talking about a different set of enforcement.
Yeah.
Before we were talking about enforcement against the illegal immigrant population. But
Mm.
remember what I said. Stephen Miller is against all immigration, ultimately. Okay,
Mm.
so now they're limited in what they can do to make it hard on legal immigrants, but they are still going to do certain things, and this is an example of one of those things. Right?
Mm.
Make it hard for students to come here.
Mm.
That's what they're trying to do. Okay,
Mm.
and they're trying to do so kind of within what they believe to be their legal authority. It's harder when a student's already here to kick them out. They're
Mm.
trying it now with Harvard, right? And in other cases where they're alleging they have to allege that the person's a threat to national security to do so. Okay,
Mm.
that's a hard ask. It's a hard burden to prove if somebody's here. But if somebody's abroad, right?
Yeah.
If you are trying to get a student visa to come here for the first time or to renew your visa, they have much more latitude at consulates and embassies abroad to
Mm.
keep you from going in. Okay, so this is just an extension of their war on legal immigration and, by extension, the student immigrant population.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, they're using, in my view, but I feel pretty confident in saying this. They're using the fear of anti-Semitism and connection to Hamas, right, which is a legitimate concern in some cases, but they're
Mm.
using that as an excuse to make it hard on all students, which is not legitimate. Okay,
Mm.
hence this policy to stop student visa slots and appointments from happening until they can re-examine how they look at people's social media, right, to catch those people.
Mm.
Okay, and so your question is there? What is the news? There have been no updates yet. Everything's paused. We don't know, right? And so, um, as soon as we hear something, we'll let you know. But as far as right now, there is no updates.
No
Zero
update.
updates. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. And I know we have like 300 plus people asking questions, so I'll get to the
Okay.
questions. But just one last thing. This was another thing that big beautiful bill of Trump has
Mhm,
passed House, and everyone is like, "What does this mean? Does
mhm.
this have to do anything for us, as at least immigration purposes and all of it?"
Yeah.
So yeah.
Aside from having a hilarious name, no. Okay, so quick lesson in how laws are made in the U.S. Right?
Mm.
Um, law In order to make a law, Congress has to make a law. The president cannot make laws. The judges cannot make laws, right? The Congress makes a law. It's the beauty of the Constitution, right? Checks and balances. So in order to make a law, one of the houses of Congress, either the House of Representatives or the Senate, creates a bill. A bill is like like a law in progress, right?
Mm.
Like a hopeful law, right?
Yeah.
And then it must be voted on and passed in that particular house. So that has passed the House of Representatives. It's not
Mm.
a law yet though, because it hasn't passed the Senate. And what happened? This whole thing between Trump and Elon, where Elon started criticizing the bill because he said it increased our budget deficit, or that has really actually stalled the development of the bill in the Senate for now. So it's
Mm.
not a law, okay, and remains to be seen whether they're going to make changes to address a lot of those concerns, which are mostly fiscal. Okay,
Mm.
there is really not much of an immigration aspect to this bill,
Mm.
aside from diverting lots of money for more border enforcement,
Mm.
okay, and making it really expensive for people who want to seek humanitarian relief into the US, okay.
Mm.
But aside from that, there's nothing that affects most of the listeners here.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you again, Samir. And again, for everybody who is watching, I have put Samir's link over there in the description. Feel free to get in touch with touch with him if you need any help. And you can use UDJ. I think I'm there on your website. They can choose my name
Yeah.
if they want discounts. But cool. All right, we will get started. Let's say, considering the Fair Labor Standards Act, can we be classified as full-time employees on post-completion OPT if we are unpaid but hold equity in the company?
Oh, that's interesting. So that's a really great question. Okay. Okay? So as context to that question, Radman. So basically, you're asking, can I be an owner of a company, an OPT, right? In the immigrate purely from an immigration perspective, yes, 100% you can. Okay, you can hold equity, right, and not even receive a salary. You're
Mm.
unpaid. You just have equity under OPT. STEM OPT separate, right? That's a little different, but under the first year of OPT, you can. Um, Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, that is a great. That's more of an employment law question, and that that has not come up as an issue as to why you cannot be why you should not be unpaid but can hold equity in a company.
Mm.
Okay, so my understanding is that and this is not legal advice. We should, talk specifically, about your specific situation. But generally speaking, yes, OPT employees can be classified as full-time, unpaid, but hold equity in the company. And the idea is you're starting a company, right? You're holding equity. If you're the person who's starting it, especially if you're starting it, it's like that's kind of like your compensation is deferred, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of a different question than if you're just an employee who's being taken advantage of by somebody else, which is
Mm,
what the FLSA was intended to protect against. So.
gotcha. Awesome. What is the chance for second lottery? Do you think there's going to be one?
Yeah, probably. There almost always is one. I would not. I advise all of my clients, friends, whoever's in the lottery, don't hold your breath on this. Even if there is a second one, it's minuscule,
Mm,
right? It's really, really small. And there probably is one. We'll probably hear if there is. We'll probably hear about it by August, September-ish in that time frame. But my advice to anybody who did not get picked in the lottery is don't hang your hat on the chances of being selected in the second lottery. Okay,
mm,
that's a loser proposition. Okay, I
mm,
understand why there's a temptation to think of what other alternatives you might have. Okay, um, are you going to do STEM LPT? Will your employer hire you abroad? Or start thinking about the O1 visa for yourself. Like
mm,
I'm saying, you may not be ready for the O1 right now, but if you have a runway, if you have STEM LPT time to protect you, you can do things to prepare yourself for the O1 visa. We do this all the time. We do it through our course to help people prepare. We do a lot of O1s for recent grads, and they get approved. The O1 is actually not as hard. It's not easy, but it's not as hard as most would say it is.
mm,
Okay, so start to think creatively about how you can take your own future into your hands,
mm,
right? Rather than waiting for the government to do something for you, right? This is
mm,
kind of a mentality that we want to encourage in all immigrants because you'll be waiting forever because they are not going to do anything for you. Okay.
mm.
You got to take your future into your own hands and figure out ways to do it yourself. It's a premise of the book that I co-authored, Unshackled, right, with Sandaria.
Yeah.
The idea of like you gotta like, figure out like kind of all the different things that you could possibly do, right? Because there's a lot of actually options and information out there that you may not be aware of.
Yeah.
Figure out how to take advantage of your own or take your future into your own hands.
Yep. Awesome. I'm on my initial OPT, just a month left to apply for my STEM. I'm just discovering my options, if any. Khushbu, I'm not sure if there's more to your question, but unless Samir, you can interpret.
Yeah, I'll do my best with this question. First of all, apply right away for your STEM. Um, your options generally are, hopefully your employer will do the H1B cap for you. Hopefully you have two more chances, right? The H1B lottery. We just talked about the O1, like do some research onto that, what it might take to get an O1 visa, and how you can prepare yourself for it. You can go, your company can send you abroad for a year. You can come back on the L1 intercompany transfer visa.
Mm,
Um, you can do an H1B cap exempt.
mm,
I'm not saying it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but you can work for a nonprofit or a university, right? And work for them. They are not subject to lottery, and you can get a cap exempt H1B. In other cases, even for companies that have relationships with them.
mm,
Once again, not the easiest thing to do, but it's a possibility. Uh, Day one CPT is an option, but it's not one that I recommend. Day one CPT is going to certain select schools that will allow you to work full time while you attend kind of management training with that school, and that is something that I would probably discourage for people because
mm,
I can see that as being on the chopping block, number one on the or two on the chopping block with this administration.
mm,
Yeah, yeah.
mm. Yeah. Okay. Previously, I had L1B visa refusal in 2024. I've got my F1 visa approved this year. Will my previous refusal affect my entry to United States? Should I be worried about it at the port of entry interview?
Have to know more. What happened with the L1? Who refused it? Where? Why? Right? These are all kind of important reasons, things to look at. But I would say, and by the way, I think you have to disclose it, right? Depending on the questions on your DS-160. I don't recall if there's a question that would
No, I
specifically
think
address that.
she has already gotten her F1 visa approved. She's worried about coming to
Oh,
United
you're right. Thank you.
mode of
Yeah.
entry. Yeah.
No, I mean, you never know for sure, but I probably would not be worried if I were you at this
Yeah.
point. Those are two completely different visa classifications, and the reason, once again, I need to know the reason for denial. But as long as the reason for denial is relegated just to like your qualifications for the L1, have nothing to do with your qualifications to come to the US generally, right?
Mm.
Then the F1's a totally different ball game and has different requirements, and you were approved for it by the consulate. So I don't think it should affect your entry, but just make sure, in case you need to make sure you can discuss your ties to your home country and your reasons for why you would go back there once you are finished with your schooling.
Yep. Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I see H1B prevailing wages are considerably high right now compared to industry averages. Is this an effect of new administration? Oh, did they change that?
No, they're just high. I think it depends on the classification you're talking about. Prevailing wages are done every year. That should come out in July of
Mm.
every year. So the wages that you're looking at right now came out in July of last year under the Biden administration, and they are high. They increase every year. Everything's getting more expensive, and this is just a reflection of that, right? So when you look at prevailing wages, there are often one or two or even three different SOC codes that could be legitimately applied to the job that you do, right?
Mm.
So work with your company and work with your counsel to find the right fit for you to make sure that you're choosing the right SOC code, which has a fair wage for you, but also is not putting you in a situation where you're fudging it, and like you don't want to make the government think that you're trying to purposefully choose a code that has a low salary that has
Mm.
nothing to do with your seniority level, right? So
Yeah.
you have to map it to your seniority level. But if you're able to do that, there's a way to kind of check all those boxes and still be in compliance. So
Yeah.
yeah, talk to
Nice.
a lawyer. Yeah.
Okay. Right. I mean, last month of my initial OPD, still yet without a paid job. I wanted to know if I can stay in US using my unemployment clock without a paid job.
So that is a great question. So what I don't know is how long you have left on the clock, when you went unemployed, how long you're working. So hesitate to give like really specific advice here because there's a lot at stake. Okay. Talk to a lawyer, at least talk to your school. Your school should be able to give you some advice as to what you can and can't do.
In
Okay.
generalized answer,
Yeah.
not specific to this, but it's the first year of 90 days, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then do they get, let's say if the OPD is ending, June 15th, and I've used all of my 90 days, do I get extra 60 days as a grace period or no?
You always get a grace period after the end of your LPT, right? The question is, are you talking about the grace period, Yash? Because the answer is yes. But you can't work during the grace period anyway, so it's kind of a moot point. Um, the real question is, do you want to apply for STEM OPT or some other like STEM OPT? You have to have a job lined up. There needs to be an employer, right?
Yeah,
So
I
there's a
see.
lot more to this. It's kind of
Yeah.
complicated.
Mm.
So probably talk to somebody and get some help on
So,
this one.
and,
Yeah.
and in that, let's say he does have that grace period, in that if he looks for a job, but then he has lost STEM OPT filing period, is that correct?
Yes. You have to file for the STEM OPT before the last day of your OPT expiration. So if
Hmm.
you're in the grace period, then it's too late at that point.
Gotcha. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Samir ji, look at that.
Hey, make me feel old now.
uh, my H1B got approved and stamped in November 2024 from India with the consular processing. I'm currently working out of of India office for US based company. I completed 3 years of my OPT and STEM OPT in US, planning to return to US in August. What point should I bear in mind at port of entry?
Okay, so could you go? I mean, is it possible to go back to the first part? Thank you. There's
Yeah,
a lot to that question. So the
yes.
H1B got approved and stamped in November 2024 with consular processing. So this is a cap H1B from last year, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Consular processing. You're still working in India. Okay, and then can you go to the next part? Thank you. Planning to return to US in August. What points should I bear in mind? Oh, okay. So um, you are basically activating your H1B at the port of entry, right? You're working for the same company in India, but to the US, just keep in mind, like you haven't started working for them yet. Because in the US, everything's US centric, right? So you're beginning work with the company, like, for the purposes of CBP at port of entry, right? You're coming to
Mm,
begin work with them in August, which is totally fine. So
mm,
you're bringing your original I-797 with you, right? You may want to bring your offer letter or some sort of documentation from your company confirming that there's a position open for you, right? The same position that was applied for you in the H1B.
mm.
And you should be pretty much good to go, assuming you have a valid visa stamp in your passport. I think you said you did. So an H1B stamp. You
Yep.
should be good to go at that point. Make sure you check your I-94 once you come into the US because that is going to confirm your status. And sometimes they make a mistake on these things, and you don't know about it for 2.5 years, right? So if they make a mistake, it's on you,
Mm,
and you don't want to have to bear the repercussions of it. So always, everybody, blanket advice: always check your I-94 after coming into the U.S. because mistakes are often made on those things.
mm, mm. Can that mistake be, and now that I just came back and I haven't checked mine, but can that mistake be rectified?
Let's go online, screen share. Let's everybody check UD's I-94 in front of everybody. I'm just kidding. So yes, it can be. So let's talk about what a mistake is, right? The mistake that you want to avoid is you're either admitted in the wrong status, which happens sometimes.
Mm,
Your H1B, you're admitted as a B1, B2. Um, More commonly, you're given an expiration that's shorter than the one that you should have gotten. Okay.
mm,
And what if you are here now past that expiration date because you didn't realize it? That could be a disaster, right? Why does that short change happen? For two reasons. Number one, because they make a mistake. Let's say they look at the expiration of your visa stamp, right? Instead of the I-797, right? If that's the case, that can be rectified. You email deferred inspection
mm,
and they have a process to correct it immediately.
mm,
Okay. If it's because your passport's expiring, they're allowed to do that, actually.
mm.
So that is something you cannot correct. So make sure your passport's always valid for what? At least 6 months out,
Yeah,
ideally longer, right? Because you don't want your I-94 shortchanged to the passport expiration.
yeah.
And if it is, you need to get a new passport, leave, and come back in, or extend your H1B quickly in the US.
Mm, nice. Okay. H1B transfer just approved for employer B. Um, COE. I'm not sure what COE is. Change of employment, I
Change
think.
of employer.
Oh, employer. Background is F1 to H1B change of status started 10/20 to 2024. No stamping done. What are the risks? Can current employer A revoke H1B visa after notice?
Okay, so the situation is you got an H1B cap last year. You changed from F1 to H1B. Now you've changed employers from that company to another company, and that transfer just improved. Congratulations, right? Now you're worried about like, oh, what is company A gonna do? This is such a common thing. Like, company A can't do anything to you. You're allowed to change companies.
Mm,
Okay, you
mm,
got as long as your transfer is approved. Even if they would, and by the way, company A has to withdraw the H1B. They're required by law to withdraw the H1B. What does that mean to you? Absolutely nothing. It just means that their obligation to pay you ends. That's it. That's all it means, right?
mm,
Um, and your transfer is approved now, and your status is based on company B's approval. Okay, this is the first time this is happening for you, so it's freaky. Trust me, you're gonna be doing this over and over and over again. You'll be an old hat at it over time.
And I think his concern is probably because no stamping. So there's no stamp on H1B. But
Well, what does that have to do with anything? I mean, I
right,
understand that, right? What does that have to do with anything? A stamp is only for one purpose, which is
yeah,
for what?
to come, yeah,
To come back into the US after you leave.
yeah.
But you haven't left the US yet,
Mm,
right? So, by the way, with an H1B stamp, when you go get one, it'll be let's say it's a company B. It's based on company's B's H1B. Then you might change from company B to company C. That stamp, assuming it's unexpired, is still valid on an
yeah,
H1B.
yep, yeah,
Okay.
nice. Okay, nice. I have completed my MBA last year and got my OPT approved, but I transferred my service to another college to fulfill my CPA credits. Would this affect me when I apply to EAD again next year?
I mean, so you completed the MBA, got the OPT approved, transferred the SEVIS to another college to fulfill CPA credits. So does that mean you changed schools? Basically changed schools to finish CPA credits. And would that affect you when you apply to an EAD again next year? I don't think so, but I honestly don't know. This is the kind of thing that there's some things that happen like within the school system that most attorneys like we're not privy to it, right?
Yeah,
So this is one where you talk to your school, like make sure you get the answer from them in writing that you're allowed to be doing this.
yeah.
Okay. And if you have questions about your eligibility to apply for an EAD based on your transfer of your SEVIS account to another college, make sure you ask them. I don't think it should be an issue. EAD is not based on which college are you associated with. It's based on, are you a STEM major, right? It's basically based on that, right?
Mm,
So, but the internal workings of how it works, connections to the I-20 and your service record, that is for the school. That's usually outside the scope of what most attorneys know.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. If someone on H1B is laid off but used only 2 out of total 6 years, can one return to India now and still use the remaining 4 years to work in United States at a later time, like
Maybe
2028?
after 2028. Wow. You're giving me a lot of like mathematical puzzles here, Yudi. Okay, this is a good one. So someone on H1B is laid off. I'm glad I had my cup of coffee, my 2 cups of coffee this morning. Okay, someone on H1B is laid off, but used only 2 out of total 6 years. And assuming they're in India, because they said, can one return to India now? Okay, and still use the remaining 4 years. Yeah, absolutely. Now you can use the remaining 4 years, but maybe not after 6 years have passed since your first H1B was approved. Okay, I say maybe because it's not 100% known, but I
Mm,
would plan on you. Let's say if you used 2 out of the 6 years, so let's say it's 2023. Let's say it was approved. Okay,
mm,
then I would say after 2029, you may not be able to use the remaining 4 years again.
mm. Nice.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, okay.
Okay. Right. I got an RFE I-140 for past employment proof. I can't find my old W-2s. Can I submit wage and income transcripts fetched from IRS site instead?
Yeah, this is where you need to. I mean, talk to a lawyer about. I mean, I know what you're asking, Idris, but you need to talk to a lawyer because there's a lot of context in here. What you submit it often depends on what you've submitted before and what was lacking in that submission. Okay,
Mm,
so and without knowing that information, we don't know. Generally speaking, in the I-140 context, after a perm, right? Um, what is a perm? Perm is a labor market test, right? The employer is showing I can't find anybody with these skills in the U.S. I need to hire this person. Okay, that's what a
mm,
perm is, right? Um, Part of the perm is to also show that you have the skills and education and experience required in that job posting, right?
mm,
So you should have done a verification of experience letters to prove that at that
mm,
time, right? Now you submit them at the I-140 stage, which is what you're talking about here, right? At the I-140, you have to prove that you qualified for the job that your company posted for. Okay, and it's almost always done with the employment verification letter. So that's why I'm wondering what happened here. Was there no letter? If there was a letter, was it not done on letterhead? Maybe it was done by somebody who's no longer at the company, and so they want to see proof that you were actually there. If that's the case, and you can't find your old W-2s, your wage income transcripts, I do not believe, do they identify the employer on there? I don't think they do.
Mm,
Go check, but I'm pretty sure the transcripts don't name the employer on there. You need something that shows you were working for that company.
mm.
So yeah, you need to try to find those W-2s, try to find those old paychecks. You got to get something if that's what they're asking you for, and if I have this kind of figured out correctly.
Yeah. You ready for another math problem?
Yes, there's a reason why I went to law school, okay, and not engineering school. So
Laid off on F1 OPT, STEM OPT pending, H1B picked and filed with laid off company. Okay. I have 48 unemployment days left on OPT, using them now. If I report unemployment to DSO, will this affect my STEM OPT slash H1B? I know there's a
um,
lot.
there are reporting obligations that you have. Okay, so my answer is I'm not entirely sure. Okay, but this needs to be unwinded probably in the course of like a detailed consultation, because here's the thing: it's like you don't ever want to withhold information if you're required to give it at a certain point. Okay,
Hmm.
the act of not telling somebody something when you're supposed to, right, can get you into the worst kind of trouble. Okay, I don't know exactly at what point are you supposed to report your unemployment to the DSO. Are you supposed to do it now, right? Are you supposed to do it later? Like, when do you do it? This is something that I would talk to. You could even ask your school in the hypothetical. Okay. Once again, with a STEM OPT, you have to have an employer, right? Maybe what you can do is you can premium process a STEM OPT and get that approved, because
Hmm.
then you'll be in STEM OPT, the period, and you have like a reset of your unemployment
Yeah.
days. So consider that.
And
Um,
sorry, is this something,
yeah.
just out of curiosity, is this something they can like do a consultation with you guys or no?
Of course. Yeah, no, we'd be happy to. Just one of those things where we'd have to kind of sit down and kind of look at the rules together and apply them to all the facts of the particular case, which is not really what we can do kind of in this context here.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I think generally speaking, consider premium processing of the STEM LPT.
Mm,
And also, don't be afraid to talk to your school. I mean, especially if you have a relationship with them, they may not be able to give you the full advice, but a lot of them are knowledgeable. And if you speak to them hypothetically in generalities, like you can get a lot more information from them too as to what you are and are not allowed to do.
mm,
Okay.
yeah. What's your prediction for 2014 India EB2 and EB3? I think
Well,
the
generally, my prediction. Let me look at my. Hold on, I'm looking at my palm. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. Well, generally, what happens here. First of all, no lawyer knows how to predict. Okay, I'm just gonna say that right now. Okay, nobody knows. And they just changed. The people that do the visa bulletin just changed over a couple of years ago, so they have a whole new way of doing things. Now, that being said, the immigration fiscal year runs from October to September. Okay, the whole point of the visa bulletin is to assess availability of visa numbers against projected demand.
Mm,
Okay, so the general methodology is to, at the beginning of the fiscal year in October, November, December, is to try to figure out like how much can we go forward such that we're back at zero by the time we get to August, September.
mm,
Okay, that's generally what that's not always the case, but that's kind of what they try to do. So what does that mean? When we get to July, August, September, there's usually no movement, right? Because they've gotten back to zero and they want to wait till October, until the new fiscal year starts. So my prediction is always like slow movement, if nothing, in August, September. And sometimes they mess up and they're like, "Oh my God, we totally screwed up. We have to retrogress." And that happened, I think, last year. That happens too, right?
mm,
But right now, it's looking like, just based on kind of how the July visa bulletin looks, that we're probably going to see no movement, which is probably, I mean, depressing sign, but it's better than a retrogression.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Anybody's thinking 2014 August, and you're looking at EB2 and EB3, like you're looking at the wrong thing. Like it's going to take forever to get there.
Mm,
Okay. The
mm,
idea of taking your life into your own hands means you've been working in the US forever. You're
mm,
probably an expert in what you do
mm.
now.
Yeah, I
You
mean
need to
it.
start looking to get yourself in the position of doing EB1A. Get out of this hamster wheel
Mm,
because the idea of like sitting there and watching the clock and looking at the visa bulletin, letting that dictate your future,
mm.
while everything else, while you lose opportunities for work, starting your company, taking a break, all these different things. Like, look at the EB1. You have so much experience probably by now that
Yeah,
there's probably something you can do about it.
and you have a course that you teach. It's a live cohort that you teach, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of EB1As at our firm, okay,
Okay.
and a lot of EB1A consults. And when I started doing them several years ago, I talked to almost everyone I talked to was intrinsically qualified. Like they were probably at or near the top of their field, but 8 out of 10 people didn't have the evidence to show it. You see the difference, right?
Mm,
Whereas two did. So we would do two EB1s, and the other eight were like they didn't know what to do, right? And
mm,
so it's a huge problem. These are mostly Indian nationals who are
mm,
waiting forever for green cards and
mm,
thinking that only PhDs can get EB1As, which is not true at all, right?
mm,
That is not what the EB1A is supposed to be.
mm,
So, so we started this course to help those people, the ones that are intrinsically at or near the top of like whatever field they work in. They just don't have the evidence to show USCIS in the way that USCIS wants to show it. And I don't mean by going to get Globies and Stevies judging and awards and paying for media and that stuff. That stuff is fake and artificial. Okay. But there's a real way to demonstrate your thought leadership and your stature in your field in a way that your peers would appreciate. Right. And that's
mm,
what we teach in our cohort is how do you like legitimately boost your profile to qualify for the EB1A that you probably already deserve.
mm.
Yeah.
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 And I know you guys just started one, so I'll put the link for people to go on the wait list if they are interested for the next one.
Yeah, it's a live cohort. We're in the middle of one right now. We have between 20 and 30 spots every cohort. The next one begins in September.
Mm, nice. Okay. Lots of math to do again. I will go back. Here we go. Applied change of status from H1B to B2, and it's in pending status. What measures should one take to make sure
Yeah.
a lawful status or in a stay until
Yeah.
a decision is made?
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, so what Harsh has done here, I can say the name, right? Everyone can see his okay.
Yep. Yep.
Hopefully,
Again.
I'm not outing some people here. What Harsh is doing here is what the government was kind of encouraging people to do, especially back in like a couple of years ago when there was like the massive tech layoffs. Remember? And so the government released, USCIS released a web page that said your options if you're laid off in H1B status, and one of them was you have the 60-day grace period. And then if you haven't found a job, change your status to B1, B2,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ask for 6 months,
Mm,
and then that will provide you some extra time while it's pending.
mm,
And if you were to find another job in H1B again, then apply for the H1B through your company, and they will kind of get you back into H1B after simultaneously approving the B2 and the H1B at the same time. Okay, so
yeah.
that was the approach under the Biden administration. That web page was archived like a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. It doesn't mean that they're not going to do that, but I mean, let's we can read the tea leaves here, right, between the lines. You have to be careful,
Mm,
Harsh, because um, we're still advising people to do this, by the way, but just to be careful. And you're asking now, and he's rightfully asking, how should I be careful, right? So number one, when you apply for a B1, B2, you hopefully ask for 6 months. Okay. It doesn't mean that if you don't get an answer in 6 months, you can just like chill out. Okay. Your status ends in that, or your ability to be here ends at that 6 month mark,
mm,
unless you apply for an extension, which you can do from a pending state. Okay. Um, but in each case, there are lots of examples where actually it doesn't take 6 months, and some people it takes longer. Others it took 2 months,
mm,
right? It really depends on who they decide to kind of focus in on, because especially with this government, like they feel like people are always trying to take advantage of rules, right? So
mm,
they're going to try to do what they can to nip this in the bud. So if I were you, I would not take for granted you have the full 6 months you asked for in the kind of B2 pending status, right?
mm,
I would obviously the urgency to find another job it's probably there already. But just reiterating that, okay, and trying to get back into H1B as soon as possible. And there's a possibility that if your company does apply for an H1B for you, you may not be able to change automatically in the US. You may need to leave the US and come back in with the visa stamp to activate it. Finally, make sure you have proof of your ties to return to your home country in case this doesn't work out, because that's what the B2 is predicated on. And at the very least, if they adjudicate this and they ask you for that, and if it's the B2 is denied, then you've been retroactively out of status since the end of the grace period. So you should have documentation to help you prove that you were justified in seeking the B2. That's mostly about proving your ties to your home country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Samir, do you offer? Sorry, I didn't mean to like call you Samir.
It's okay. We're just getting to know each other here. So.
Yeah. Initial offer evaluation for O1 visa and suggest steps to strengthen the profile for O1. I think we just talked about this, but
absolutely, yeah. Just go to our website, and Yudi's link to it, and we absolutely do consults for that purpose. In fact, we're trying to. Here's the thing about the O1. Okay, we're trying to get the word out, and to companies too. A lot of companies are like, the O1, we don't want to do that. That's only for like maybe like the VPs and directors or the PhDs and stuff. And that's 100% not true, right? The O1s can be for recent grads who do meet the regulatory threshold. You still have to meet like the requirements, but it's actually obtainable. It absolutely is, because this is extraordinary ability, not extraordinary accomplishment, right? Ability for the O1 means like, you demonstrate the ability that you're going to be extraordinary, right? And you can, recent grads, especially those really talented recent grads from like, master's degree programs, they've done some research and some things here and there, still working in the private sector, being offered jobs with really good salaries, right? Like, you're already killing it. And that is like half the battle for an O1. And it doesn't take that much more to put you over the top. So people should be considering the O1 more. Okay.
Yeah. I was just saying, like, I would love to do these dedicated, maybe focused webinars or master classes on O1s and EB1s and all of those things.
We should look at, we used to do profile building just for EB1As, and then realize like the same concepts apply to the O1. Like if you didn't get an O1 or an H1B in the cap, like profile build to an O1. Or if you're not at the EB1A stage, profile build to an NIW, right? NIWs are hard right now. They're getting denied for many of the same reasons that those of you, people who have not profile built, are not able to get them, because it's all about, people apply based on what they've done for the company, but you need a well-rounded, diverse set of accomplishments for the NIW now. That's what profile building is, right? So there's so many different things you can do. Once again, take your own life into your own hands, right? To stabilize your, present and future.
Yeah, love it. Cool. I applied for STEM, but my concern is I only get 1,000 USD bi-weekly as a full stack developer, 30 hours per week. It's a startup. Having low pay in STEM is equal to rejection.
Well, so what does the STEM OPT process look like, right? You're submitting your I-765 to USCIS, right? But I believe, don't believe that 983 goes to US. I believe it goes to the school. I have to go back and check on that. But the company's making an attestation. They're paying you not a prevailing wage like the H1B. Okay, the company is making an attestation that they're paying you what's like commensurate with what you should be making in the market. Okay, so if they signed off on that and the school accepted it, it should be okay. It's hard to say. There isn't a number. Like there isn't like a number I can look at and say, no, that's too low. It's all kind of a judgment call. But if the school okayed it, in our experience, it generally works out to be okay.
Okay. My husband is a US citizen and got his citizenship through his parent before turning 18. While he has a US passport, he wasn't given a certificate of naturalization. Should he file N600 or not required?
That is a great question. It's not required, although advisable, to always have as much documentation as possible. It's certainly not required.
Mm,
'Cause I don't even think you get a naturalization certificate if you get your citizenship through your parents. I don't believe that's the case. I believe you just get your passport. I have to go back and check. The rules around citizenship are actually super complicated. But that being said, if you have the passport, that's what they call prima facie proof that you're a citizen. Okay. But in this environment, it never hurts to have additional proof. And that would be a certificate of naturalization would always help. So I would encourage you to do so.
mm,
Yeah, over document yourself.
yeah. Okay. I'm on F1 visa. Last month I was in an accident, not at fault, and the other driver fled. Out of curiosity, can I be able to get citizenship? I would like to know about you visa. Mm,
Um, okay, so well, I guess question is you're thinking way too ahead right now. You probably had a traumatic event. The accidents are super traumatic. I'm sorry that happened to you.
mm,
That must have been super scary, and I hope you're okay. I hope you weren't hurt. Now that being said, it was a hit and run. You have to report. I'm sure you reported to the police. Hopefully you did, right? Um, can you get citizenship? This does not keep you from getting citizenship. Oh, you're asking because somebody else committed a crime and I witnessed it. Can I get citizenship? I understand what your question is.
mm,
No, no, there's no way. The U visa is a means, possibly, if you're a witness to a crime and you help the police kind of solve that crime, that you can potentially get a U visa. But generally, those that are going for the U visa are those that don't have any status in this US.
mm,
Okay.
mm,
And they need the U visa because they have nothing, but you already have an F1 visa, right?
mm,
So this does not give you anything more, really. Okay. And plus, there's a war on U visas right now with this administration, so you kind of want to stay away. Even worse than there is a war on F1 holders.
mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, last couple question. EB1C question. Lived in US for 9 years. Have H1B and I-140. Moved to UK 15 months ago through intra-company transfer. Responsibilities include managing my team, hiring, but title has no manager. Am I eligible?
The you're asking, can you are you eligible for the L1A and the EB1C? Come back here, which would be brilliant. That's an EB1, right? Um, Everything in immigration about eligibility based on your job is always based on your duties, not your title. You
Nice.
understand? Now, the title gives a perception, right? There's optics around what the title is, right? But legally speaking, they're supposed to focus in on your duties, right? So your company needs to adequately argue that you are a manager abroad. You hopefully you had managing your team out there, and maybe managing some essential functions, and you will also do so here in the U.S. And if they're successfully able to do so, it shouldn't matter what your title is. It matters what you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Hmm. Nice. Okay, big one. This I'm currently on OPT. Got my H1B approved, but H1B is getting effective in October 2025. Is it safe for spouse to apply for H4 visa now, or after my H1B gets effective? Also, currently I have less pay on OPT, and after H1B I'll get as per LCA. So if officer asks for pay stub, then is it fine to show OPT payroll?
Yeah, good questions. You can apply now. I would do that. You can also just have your spouse, like if there's travel involved. See, a lot of people don't know, like there's two ways to apply for an H4. You can apply on the I-539 form right now, right
Hmm.
here in the US. Or once your status is in effect, Jalak, your spouse can just leave the US and come back in with the H4 visa stamp. And that's the same thing as changing your status.
Hmm.
And they will get the full 3-year period that you have on your H1B. Okay. So if you were to apply here in the US, you're worried about your pay on OPT right now. Um, they they might ask for it. You may have to submit pay stubs, but you're not required to be making the H1B salary right now.
Hmm.
You're only required to be making the H1B salary after October 1st. So I would think it's a non-issue, honestly. So yes, while you may have to prove that you're currently in status, you're applying for an I-539 for your spouse with an October 1st start date. It's kind of less of an issue what you're doing right now. What's
Mm.
more an issue is that your H-1B takes effect on October 1st. And yes, you can apply now. But the path of least resistance, if there is travel involved, would be to get the stamp and come back in post October 1st.
Nice. All right. Love it. Can you do one last question or?
Sure, let's do it. Yeah, do one
Okay.
more.
There was some attorney saying EB1A approvals are getting revoked. Did you see any of these?
That's some attorney. Who is that some attorney? Uh, EB1A approvals are getting revoked. This is a very general kind of rumors. It's like rumors spreading rumors. Let's kind of like let's be kind of nitpicky about details here.
Mm.
EB1A approvals have always been getting revoked occasionally. It's not like a mass thing that's happening. If there's fraud in an EB1A, it'll get revoked, and that happens occasionally. And it always has happened occasionally. If there's fraud, it will be revoked. Okay. I have not seen anything about mass revocations on EB1As for no reason. So no need to get worried and panicked about that. But just also begs to, I mean, it's important to remember the way you build your profile for EB1A should be legit, not fraudulent, right? Because if you try to buy your way or try to kind of fake your way to an EB1A, it could lead to a revocation in the future with a fraud finding, which is a permanent bar from the US. Okay, so there is a lot at stake. Do it the right way, right? Don't try to kind of fake or defraud your way into the EB1A process because they are going to be looking for that more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't see there was a super chat. Would you mind answering one last question?
Okay, one time. I got 1 minute for a super chat. Always
Okay.
have time for a super chat.
There we go. I'm on H1B with employer A, green card in process, and I have EB3 EAD from employer B. Can I use EAD to work for both A and B?
Technically, yes, you can. They kind of coexist right now simultaneously. So the H1B can be in existence, the EAD can be in existence technically, and it kind of doesn't matter which one you're working on for employer A. Like employer A considers you to be an H1B. What does it matter if you're on the EAD or not? I think your question is, can I switch to EAD so I can do other stuff, right, on my EAD aside from employer A? And if that's the case, to be safest, you leave the US, you come back in on your advanced parole and EAD card. Okay. Tell your employer, I just came in on the AP. They're not really going to care, honestly. But now you've activated your EAD.
Mm.
Kind of. It's kind of already been active. And now you're able to work kind of freely, like in the open market, right? While your H1B is kind of also there at the same time. It's very confusing. The government hasn't done a good job of explaining how the two interact. For the most part, in my experience, they just interact kind of simultaneously and they coexist. So
Nice. Love it. Thank you, Samir. I'll see you next week, Wednesday, same
Okay.
time. And
Thanks, Yudi.
we'll talk more about other things, but thank you again.
Amazing. No, it was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
Yes. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye.